Hello everyone, today I wanted to share with you some of the seeds that I'm going to be sowing for fall planting. This vegetable garden was overtaken by weeds. I cleared up 5 beds. I still have a lot of beds to clear up. I have some beds that I need to harvest and some beds that are just full of weeds that I need to clear up and get to planting. But today I'm going to be planting the 5 beds that we have over here, or as much as I can from what we have over here. Also, I have some onions that I need to harvest. If we get the time, I will finish harvesting them. I already harvested some onions already, and I will be harvesting the rest today, hopefully, because their necks are bending, they're ready to be harvested, and when the onion necks bend over, you have to harvest them because then they'll start to rot. So I need to grab some fertilizer and some tools, and then we'll get started on planting. I already fertilized this bed on my right side with some chicken manure, and now I'm going to fertilize this bed, that bed over there, and then we are going to start planting. These 4 beds over here need their irrigation to be changed, but I'm not going to do any of that today because I just want to focus on planting. And once the planting is done, then I will focus on changing the irrigation in these beds. The first crop that I'm going to be planting in 2 of the beds that are behind me over here are beans. I'm going to be planting the contender beans and also the Blue Lake bush beans. Now, I only have a few of these Blue Lake bush beans. I got the Blue Lake pole beans, but I don't want to plant these. These, I'm not sure how long it is until the maturity date, but it says that they are an early cropper, and the contender beans mature in 60 days. Right now we are on August 8th, and our first frost date is around September 24th. Now, it doesn't always come around that time. Sometimes we have early frosts like that, and sometimes it doesn't take until the end of October until we get a frost. So every year is different, but I'm not going to go off of that for this reason. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plant them. I will keep monitoring the weather to make sure that these are not going to get frostbitten. Once the temperatures start to cool down, then I will come with some metal hoops and a frost cover, and I will cover them at night so that they don't get frost damage on them. And this way I will be able to harvest beans, because in this way they will keep going until I just don't want them to go anymore, or until we have snow and the snow weight kind of goes down on the frost covers, which I do not want. So I will also have to monitor for snow, because once snow is about to come, I will have to pull the frost covers so that they don't get damaged, and just let the weather do its thing. And if snow comes, oh well, snow comes. At least I would have harvested some beans off of these. And also, even if I weren't able to harvest, now these are a good variety of beans and I don't want to waste them, but even if I weren't able to harvest, these beans provide nitrogen into the soil. Now, I did put chicken manure in here, and that's full of nitrogen as well. But if you are trying to add nitrogen into the soil and you don't have chicken manure, what you can do is plant beans, then do what is called a chop and drop method. So before the plants start producing fruits, once they reach kind of the mature height, you chop them and then you drop them on the ground, or you can also bury them under the ground, and all this nitrogen would get into the soil. And also the beans themselves, the plant itself, produces nodules around the roots that are full of nitrogen. And so you keep the roots in the ground and you put the leaves either on top of the soil or under the soil. If you put them under the soil, you're more likely to retain more nitrogen. If you put them over the soil, you are still going to retain a lot of nitrogen. I know that from experience because I put a lot of stuff over the soil. That kind of protects the surface of the soil, and it also will provide you with nitrogen. Granted, not as much as it would if you were to bury them into the soil. So now that I have the chicken manure ready in here, I was going to scratch it into the soil, but I think it's okay if I just leave it over the surface of the soil. I don't have to scratch it. No big deal. I'm just going to plant these and kind of set the irrigation around them just the way how it is right now. And hopefully in the next few days I'll be able to come here and replace this irrigation, because it's just the supply tubing, and I poked little holes in it. Some holes drip and some holes spray. So doesn't really work that well. And I want to make sure that everything gets adequate water in here so that we don't end up with diseases and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get these planted. Oh, before I do that, let me know how far apart, let me tell you how far apart to plant them. So the contender beans, you want to plant them about 6 to 8 inches apart from each other. They grow about 16 to 18 inches. And the Blue Lake bush beans, 4 inches apart from each other. And these, does it say how big they grow? They grow about a foot or so, maybe a little bit over a foot, about so. So you can plant them pretty close together. So this space hopefully is going to give me a lot of beans. So let's go ahead and get planting. I had enough beans to fill up this bed right here, and half a row, I should say, not one, half a row of this bed, so it stopped about right here of the contender beans. And I only had a few of the Blue Lake bush beans. And I planted the Blue Lake bush beans on this side over here because even though the sun comes up from this side over here in the morning, it goes down on that side over there in the afternoon. So I wanted to make sure that they would receive afternoon sunlight, so when they're right here they would get some afternoon sunlight and they would not be shaded by the contender beans, because the contender beans, I believe, are just a little bit taller than the Blue Lake bush beans. So I just finished putting these 9-gauge wire over here, and these are just, I think, bus wires or something like that. They come in a big coil, and I cut them to the size that I want them to be. And now when the frost is coming, all I have to do is just put a frost cover over this, and I use paper clips to clip it into these hoops over here. I use the small ones to clip it onto the hoops, and I use the really large ones to clip it onto the frost cover itself to pinch it together. And then I use a rock to put over the frost cover and sometimes around the edges over here so that the wind doesn't blow it over, and then all the plants end up being exposed to the frost. You can find these coils in your local big box stores, and you can also find them online, but they are most likely going to be cheaper if you find them in your big box store, because the shipping costs would probably be too expensive to get them online. One thing you want to pay attention to when you are doing fall planting is that you want to count from the time you are planting to the time of your first frost date. And the maturity date of the crops that you plant have to fit within these margins from the time you plant to the time that they mature and start producing food for you. And you want to give the maturity date a little bit of a buffer, because one, the plant needs time to germinate, two, after the maturity date, that's when they start producing fruit for you, so you want to be able to harvest from those fruits. And so be mindful of that, and make sure whatever crop you are picking has ample time within these margins to grow, to mature, and to produce for you. So this is kind of the rules that you have to follow when it comes to fall planting. Also, some plants do better in cooler weather than warmer weather, so also be mindful of that. As I said earlier, these beans have a maturity date of 60 days, so I don't really have that much time on hand. I might, depending on how early the frost comes, but because I'm not so sure about this is why I am using the hoops, and in the future I will be using the frost covers. I do the same thing in the spring to extend my spring season. Once the snow stops and the weather is super cold outside, I bring out the frost covers and the hoops and I start planting. I wasn't able to do it this year, unfortunately, but no big deal. This year kind of my whole garden wasn't the same as I want it to be, but there were lots of projects happening, so that's not a big deal. Now I'm able to plant, and I'm thankful that I'm able to plant right now. So now that we have planted the beans, let me show you what else we are going to plant. Right now I have lots of leafy greens, and these leafy greens can handle warm temperatures and cool temperatures, even frost. So these are perfect to plant right now. So let me show you what these plants are. I have many different varieties of kale. Kale tolerates all sorts of temperatures. However, when it is warm, it is more likely to be impacted by pests, and that's one thing you want to be mindful of. So I just have to stay on top of it, make sure that there are no aphids on it or anything of the sort, because this kale is an aphid attractor. Once the temperatures get warm, that's what happens. It just brings all the aphids to it. And today it's in the 80s. It is so humid. It's really bad. I mean, I'm just standing here and I'm dripping. I didn't do that much hard work, really. You know, I just pushed the wheelbarrow and planted. That's not hard work. Anyways, so I have here the Japanese flowering kale, dwarf Siberian kale, red Russian kale, and also Swiss chard. And the same goes for Swiss chard. It can handle a variety of temperatures, and this is the Bright Lights Swiss chard. It is amazing. It has it's beautiful and it tastes wonderful. And I'm planting all these different varieties because we love kale, and also I love to experiment with all sorts of different foods. We like to try new things, and we're not afraid of trying new things. And by trying new things, it allows you to kind of know which ones you like best and which ones you don't. And I might still plant some things even if I don't like them, like for example the Japanese flowering kale. If I like its structure, I might want to use it in some flowering containers if I don't like its flavor. But I have a feeling I'll probably like its flavor because we just love kale. So let me share with you the specs of these plants and how they grow. This Japanese flowering kale, you want to space them 14 inches apart, and it doesn't say how big they grow, but I'm assuming it's a small plant because it is kind of it's a decorative plant, and it's not going to grow like the red Russian kale would. And it is frost hardy. And the red Russian kale over here, you want to space them 8 inches apart. Now, even though it says you want to space them 8 inches apart, these plants grow huge. So I still plant them pretty close together, but they grow so tall, and by the time they are fully mature, they look like this gigantic plant. It's really cool. And this is the first time I'm trying this variety over here. This is the dwarf Siberian kale. I'm super interested in trying this one. Usually I plant this kind of really kale, I don't know its name, but it tastes wonderful. It's just the same variety that you would find at the grocery store, but I love it. It's absolutely amazing, especially because it's organically grown. I don't spray them or anything like that. I might, if I see aphids on them, might spray them with some BT, or if I see some Japanese beetles or anything like that, some beetles on them, I will use some of the diatomaceous earth, and that will take care of the problem. And I don't have to reapply it that much, just until the bugs are dealt with and they're no longer bothering the plants. They say about the dwarf Siberian kale, it's also 8 inches apart, but it's compact. It doesn't tell me how tall it grows, but I'm assuming it's going to be smaller than the red Russian kale. And the Swiss chard doesn't say how tall it grows, I think, but you want to plant them about 4 to 6 inches apart, and the rows should be 12 to 18 inches apart because they kind of open up a little bit. So I would say they grow about 18 inches tall to a foot wide, to 12 inches wide maximum. You can plant them pretty close together, but when you do plant them close together, they're not going to be as productive as you would if you were to thin them, because when you thin them, the plant is allowed more sunlight and more space to grow, and therefore it's going to just put on its full potential. It's going to put on all the leaves that it wants and mature to its full maturity, growth, and even more sometimes. Especially here, now that I added this chicken manure over here and I put tons of compost in these beds. I'm not sure if I did put any compost in this garlic bed over here, but I did put chicken manure. Regardless, the other beds, I have compost in them. So these plants are just going to love it. So let's go ahead and plant these. I also have a design in mind. So let me take you over there to the bed and kind of give you the design, and hopefully you can see what I'm talking about and envision it in your mind as I have envisioned it in my mind, because I can see the picture clearly, and hopefully it comes out as I want it to be. Because even though I'm planting a vegetable bed, I still want it to look beautiful. I don't know about you, but I like to look at pretty things, and especially when I come here to the vegetable garden, I want it to be pretty. Right now it's overtaken by weeds, so I'm trying to take it over again and make it beautiful, because last year I enjoyed it so much. It looked so beautiful and it was so productive, and I want it to be that way again, and hopefully we can get to that point this year. Let's see. I was going to plant in this bed, but I changed my mind because the hoops are right here, and I want to plant as much kale as I can so that I can preserve it and put it in the freezer, because we love kale. I also want to preserve some Swiss chard because I do love to make Swiss chard rolls and pies and all that stuff, and I want to be able to have the space to plant as much as I want without the plants overcrowding each other. So this bed will have to be for something else, and because of these hoops I will have to kind of sacrifice some of the space over here, unless I plant something over here that might need the hoops as well. So if I decided to plant something that needs hoops over here, then I can extend the hoops to this bed over here, and then just all this bed would be kind of dedicated for things that need frost covers. So this bed, I will have to bury all these eggshells in here, and I'll till them in a little bit, but bear with me. Let's look at this bed, it's nicer. So on the outer edge, all around the outer edge of the bed, what I want to do is plant this Japanese flowering kale, and that's going to create a border around the bed. It's going to look beautiful and provide that kind of formal border appearance. I can't talk. And then around on the inside, around that border, I'm also going to create another border, and that is going to be with a dwarf Siberian kale. And then in the middle, I'm going to, in the middle of the bed, like right over here, you're going to see this red Russian kale, and I'm going to plant probably like 2 or 3 of them, maybe, depending on how much I can fit in there, or maybe I can just create a little circle and plant in it, fill it in. And then on the outside of the middle, so over here and over here, I'm going to be planting the Bright Lights Swiss chard, and that's going to create a beautiful bed, and it's going to be super colorful, and all this color is going to be coming from all of these leafy greens that we can eat, and they're going to also be beautiful. So let's go ahead and prepare this bed just a little bit and get planting. This bed over here is all planted. So right now I have some nasturtium seeds with me and I'm going to plant them right over there. I don't know if I'll have any flowers off of them, but I want at least the leaves from them because they are so pretty, and also you can use them in salads. I don't know if I'll use them in salads, but I'll try. So I have a tomato over here that is barely growing, so I don't know if I'll get anything from this one over here. I probably won't get anything, but I'll let it grow. So I'm going to plant the nasturtium right here. I'll probably plant a couple of them. One over here and one over there. No, never mind. I'll plant one right there so that it can dangle over the side because I don't want it blocking any of these kale over here, because I want the kale also to go over this side and fill in part of this side, so probably like right up to here. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be planting in here. I'll dig through my seeds and see. I also have some space right over here, so I'll be burying all this compost in the ground and be planting in here. But look, because of the compost, look at these Rudbeckia, black-eyed Susans, how well they are doing. And these just seeded themselves over here. I had to pull these two right there. They were doing super well, but I felt so bad, but I have to, because for this bed to look beautiful, these have to be out of here, and for the kale to receive enough sunlight without anything blocking it, these have to get out of here. So now I still have to plant the rest of this bed over here. I'm going to do that before I plant this bed. So let me go ahead and gather my seeds and I'll show you what I'll be planting in here. I decided on planting carrots in this bed over here, and I think that's going to be perfect because, well, they're not going to need any covering, but they're going to be low, so I can cover them if I have to. Just not for protection reason, because they can withstand the frost. They can even stay in the ground if you want to keep them in the ground. But just because of this frost cover is here, I can just push them over a little bit and then plant from here. And I don't need tons of carrots. We don't use carrots that much. I will be preserving these also once they are up. I still have lots of carrots that I need to harvest that I didn't harvest yet. I need to harvest them before they get woody. So with these carrots, you want to plant them with, these are Scarlet Nantes carrots, and I already planted some of these. They're great, and I've been using them in cooking and fresh eating and stuff like that. And you want to plant them about 2 to 4 inches apart, and you want to make sure to thin your carrots so that they can grow big once you plant them. I try to plant them without the need of thinning them, but I still have to thin them, not as much as if I were to scatter them. I try to plant 1 or 2 seeds in each hole. These, all the seeds fell in the bag that I was saving seeds in, because these were my spring crops that I was going to plant in the spring. But these are things that you can still plant in the fall because they can take the frost, they can last throughout the winter if you keep them in the ground, and it would act sort of like a root cellar, so you can do that. If you live in a mild area and you don't get snow, that's probably even better, unless you get, sorry, I have mosquitoes that keep trying to bite me. So if you live in a mild area and you don't get tons of snow, you can keep them in the ground and harvest them throughout the winter. But if it gets super hot in your area, you probably won't be able to keep these in the ground because they're probably going to bolt on you, because the extreme heat will cause these to bolt. Looks like it's about to rain, so I'm going to hurry up and plant these. And I was hoping I'll be able to plant that bed over there. I might not be able to. I might not even be able to pull up the onions, but at least I would have planted lots of stuff in here and it would have made my heart happy. In this bed I'm going to plant some Italian parsley. I still have some time, yay! So actually I'm going to fill this whole bed with Italian parsley. And parsley, you can harvest it pretty much any time. If you live in a mild climate, you can actually overwinter your parsley and you can just mulch it a little bit as long as it doesn't get over 0 Fahrenheit. Actually, over here it gets to minus 15 Fahrenheit. It doesn't usually get to that. And last year it got to minus 20 Fahrenheit. And the year before that, some of my parsley came back, and that is because it was surrounded by plants. The plants kind of mulched it, and that protected it from the cold winter weather, and it came back. It was super robust. So if I want to, I can mulch these if I want and have them come back that way. I don't know if I'll do that. So I'm going to plant them. I'll probably put some hoops over them so that I can extend the season, so that I can continue to harvest them throughout the frost season, because if they are still tender during the frost can take them pretty quickly, but if they are strong and kind of robust, they will be able to withstand some light frost. Once the hard frost comes, it will just take them. And this is why I think I'm going to put some hoops over them and put some frost covers over them once the weather cools down a little bit. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put some chicken manure in here, which is going to be perfect for parsley because we are growing some leafy greens in here, and leafy greens love nitrogen. So I'm gonna put the chicken manure. Everything away, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I still need to put staples in this bed over here. I hear it. It's coming over here. It's gonna be pouncing on me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye.